All right, so this is the special meeting of the Bellflower City
This
Council,
meeting is being recorded.
and it's Monday, May 24th, 2021, and it's about 2:05 in the afternoon. And now I'll read the rest of this here. Before we begin, please note that all public meetings will be recorded. When a participant logs in via their computer or calls in to join the meeting, their name and/or phone number will be visible to all participants. Unless you are providing public comment, your audio will be muted and your video will be disabled. Persons wishing to be audience members to the meeting may do so anonymously. Anonymous participants, however, will not be recognized for public comment. Persons who seek to bypass the city's host controls will be dropped and blocked from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Santinas,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton,
Here.
Councilmember Hamada,
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Here.
Mayor Coops.
Here. Public comments, Mr. Stewart.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3A, the public may address the City Council on matters listed on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on an agenda item must utilize one of the three methods listed on page 2 of the agenda. You will be given 3 minutes to address the City Council. Attempts to provide comment at times not designated on the agenda may result in the city dropping you from the meeting.
All right. If you'd like to speak, please use the raised hand feature. If by computer, it appears under the participants tab. If by phone app, it'll appear under the more button at the bottom of the right-hand corner. Or if by telephone, simply press the number 6 to raise your hand. You will be called upon in the order received. You can then unmute your microphone so that you can provide your comments. Do we have any public comments this afternoon?
Mayor, I'll give the public a moment to utilize the feature.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on. 4A, consideration and possible action to approve the adjustments to the management's recommended budget for fiscal years 2021-23. Staff report.
This is a consideration of possible action to approve adjustments to the management's recommended budget for fiscal years 21 through 2023. And the recommendation, of course, is City Council review and discuss approved proposed adjustments to the management's recommended budget for fiscal years 2021 through 2023, as is, or with modifications, or to alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. You have a 2-page staff report with you. On the back side of that page is the list of budget changes that have been brought about by either management or the city council members themselves. There's only about 40 million, so it shouldn't be too much. I'm joking. So I think with this time, I want Tay to take over and run through the proposed changes on this budget, and then the council can take the action that it deems fit.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. There are 15 items for consideration. First 11 items, except for 2B and number 3, that are shaded in gray, were requested. The ones that are shaded in gray were requested by Councilmember Sanchez. The balance of the items were discussed at the previous budget study sessions. The last 4 items, items 12 through 15, are being proposed by staff. If you like, I can go over one at a time.
Yeah, please do.
Let me project the screen. Okay, I just shared the screen. First item is a code enforcement overtime. This is for enhanced weekend coverage and also targeted enforcement. That would mean $4,000 extra each year for code enforcement overtime. Second item is relating to radar feedback signs. We have budgeted $40,000 for 6 signs. This line item is to add flashing lights at the cost of $5,000. 2B is add 2 more locations. So we'll be adding 4 more signs, and that cost is $32,000 additional. Item 3 is to add 2 fixed automatic license plate reader systems, and this will cost $76,000 in the first year in equipment and installation costs, and $1,080 in the second year for wireless connectivity. Fourth item is purchase and installation of 100 units of ring for neighborhood safety program, and this would be $15,000 in the first budget year. The fifth item is volunteers on patrol program promotion, including uniforms, and we're requesting $15,000 funding per year. Sixth item relates to park master plan. Parks and Recreation Director identified a Measure A grant qualifies for this, and we're proposing $150,000 in the second year. Seventh item is set aside a funding for future property acquisition, and this could be for resale or development in the existing public projects fund. There are different options that staff is proposing. 7A, it just means we'll budget annually from the general fund operating budget, $500,000 a year. Second option, B, is to determine each year based on the potential general fund surplus, how much to fund out of that savings or surplus into this property acquisition purposes, the public projects fund. And third item, C, is we still haven't closed escrow on the former Greek market property sales. So that's in the general fund. If the council wishes, we could just transfer approximately $1.6 million in sales proceeds to that public projects fund for future property acquisition. And fourth item, D, is we're currently holding the former Bank of the West property. If that is to be sold, then we can potentially put the sale proceeds in that fund as well. And last item is if there are any other future large property sales, then we can seek council's approval to transfer those funds to public projects fund. The other item, item 8, pertains to federal funding, American Rescue Plan Act. We got the final allocation from U.S. Treasury. Our share, Bellflower share, is $21.457 million. Staff is currently reviewing the Treasury guidance, and we're told that the Treasury guidance will most likely be revised. So we're waiting for that revision. And department heads and ED director are currently developing a list of proposed projects and authorized uses of the funds. We must obligate these funds by December 31st, 2024. And the expenditure deadline is 2 years after that, December 31st, 2026. The ninth item is playground shades. The council determined at the budget study sessions that this is not the preferred expenditure. And then the 10th item is Clark Avenue Freeway Overpass Mural. And staff communicated at that time that it can be done within the existing budget for street improvement. And then 11th item pertains to Economic Development Committee promotions and outreach, whether we need additional funding. At this point in time, we don't think we need additional funding to do this project. 12th, Road 12 pertains to staff seeking funding, $25,000 each in city manager's office and planning department. This is for each fiscal year. Um, at times, we are in need of expenditure for contract services that are not anticipated, therefore not budgeted. So we'd like to create this funding mechanism where if there are some unanticipated as needed um, funding for contract services, we could tap into this funding source. 13th item is public safety crossing guard services. We received the contract renewal proposal and it's greater than what we have put in the management's budget. First year by 12,300, second year by $23,800. So we'd like to increase the budget. 14th item pertains to state's revenue estimates. They recently reduced the revenue estimates for the state gas tax and road maintenance and rehab funding. So we'd like to reduce the budget to match this latest estimate. That reduction is about $144,000 a year. 15th item is HCD PLHA funding that we're using for New Hope temporary services operating costs. We just learned that the funding is higher by $284,000 a year. So we are proposing to increase the revenue for that grant item. So these are the 15 items that we would like City Council to discuss and, if possible, approve or modify as needed. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hey, Tay,
Yes.
I don't know if this is time to ask you. I was out of the state during the first two budget sessions, and I was kind of interested in the $12,000 increase in the crossing guards. Did the body decide, the council body decide to up it?
Actually, this because we provide the crossing guard services. The estimate that we use for the budget came out to be lower than what the contract renewal required. And this is also the agenda item for this evening for the regular city council meeting. If the
Oh,
council
that's not an increase.
it's just a variation in estimates rather than increase in services.
That's an estimated increase in services, the 12,000?
What happened was we requested, let me look for the sheet. We requested funding of $147,000 a year. And it turns out that the contractor requested $159,000 in the first year instead of $147,000 that we requested. And in the second year, they're requesting $178,000 instead of $147,000.
Okay, so it's not adding crossing guards, it's just the cost of doing business.
Yes, we just saw our estimate was under the contract renewal.
Gotcha. Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Amata, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, overall, it's kind of what we've all discussed. Still wondering about the federal guidance, so I would say that's a wait and see, and we're likely to have another budget-related meeting down the road, possibly to have that discussion. Just to add a comment to the crossing guards, I think during the meetings I was asking staff if there were any grants out there, and it came back that there were none, and the contractor said they weren't aware of any, but you never know. Down the road, hopefully there's something that could make its way back to protect the walking public. So um, I think overall, and I'd encourage, the staff amendment on the contract services seems appropriate. Things are changing fast, and there'll be some studies down the road that I think are going to be needed to address some land use issues and some other related matters. So I think overall it's a sound budget. I think we all work together well on this, and definitely everything looks good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Amata. Mr. Victor Sanchez, any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to comment. I'm for it being my first time in this process. I'm thankful for all the information, and then I just want to say that I'd like to see the additions on here. I think they're going to be valuable to our goals of reducing some of these speeding issues that we have across the city. So, and then I hope that the fixed automatic license plate readers will help us too, and kind of maintaining our law enforcement. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Councilmember Sunny Sanyanez, questions and comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Again, thanks to Tay for putting together this budget adjustments. And as was mentioned earlier, this came about during our couple of budget sessions. Just a couple of questions, Tay, on item 2B and 3. These are coming out of, I like the idea of this license plate reader systems and the feedback signs. Are there any grants available out there that can fund these two items?
Mr. Santinez, we've looked for the past couple of years, we've looked for grants for specifically the speed signs that we're requesting here. We've not found any grants that will meet the specific items. So this year we just decided to go ahead and put them in the budget straight up. And then we kind of like the concept, at least on 2 more locations in the city, 4 signs, 2 different locations, 2 different directions. And we think that makes sense. So we're just proposing as a general fund item at this time. But as always, we'll continue to look for them. And who knows, we might find a wrinkle in the federal guidelines, and we can use some of that too. We're still looking into that as well. So
okay, good. I was about to ask that. Okay, good. Thank you. And then on item number 7, I mentioned at the last budget session, I was proposing a funding of $1.5 million as a target, and it to be funded through year-end savings, hopefully sooner than later. And so I am proposing that, and the $1 million, is that another recommendation from someone else, or?
no, in fact, to be honest with you, Mr. Senator, as I was going to ask Tay when I read this item over, I didn't see a recommendation for the 1.5. Tay, did we include that somewhere and I'm just missing it, or what?
What happened was I wasn't too clear as to what the council wanted precisely. So I was trying to come up with different types of funding sources.
Yeah, I think Mr. Santinez wants a baseline of 1.5 into the budget year 1 is what he was looking at and his specific request. And we can get there through a variety of means. It's just a matter of how we want to do that. Is there a way? I mean, well, we should get consensus first to see if that's where the council wants to go, and then figure out where to. Yeah, and put that into the item. But I think that was pretty clear. That was the baseline money that he was looking for.
Right.
I think, Jeff, the discussion I brought forward was, let's see if we can do 500 up to $1 million per year. Tay's response was, let me look at the numbers, see what we can do and what could be brought forward.
Right. So we have a couple of conflicting.
Sonny said, why don't we shoot for 1.5? And so I think that's where we're in discussion at this point. We're hoping, I would like to see 1.5 myself on a yearly basis, but we got a pretty strong surplus this year. It may not happen every year. but to me, that would be a good starting point.
I'm in with that, Mayor.
All right, so I've got, how about you, Victor? You like 1.5 or you want to do less?
I'll support 1.5.
Yeah.
And how about you, Mr. Amata?
Yes, I'll concur.
All right, so Sonny, I think that's a done deal there.
All right, thank you.
Anything
And
else you want?
then in terms of funding, one thing that crossed my mind is that, Tay, can you confirm this? In the money coming from the successor agency, we're setting aside $500,000 of that for the the unfunded liability for CalPERS, right?
Yes, yes,
And then,
you're correct.
so how much extra do you have once we pay out the $500,000 for this year?
This year, 316,000. Next
Okay.
year is a little bit higher, 331,000.
So so for this year, if we decide to, we can put that extra money into this $1.5 million.
Yes, yes, definitely we can use that money. So
Okay, all right, good. So that, because that money hasn't been spoken for yet at this time.
right, there's no
Okay.
earmark for that funding.
All right, so that's another source of the $1.5 million. Okay. All right. Other than that, Mayor, I'm good with all these recommended changes. I think we went to the budget adjustment, the whole budget actually, with a fine tooth comb, and I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Now, when back to your discussion about the 1.5, so we're going to do it, since it's a 2-year budget, we're going to do 1.5 the first year, we're going to do 1.5 the second year. Is that how you're reading this?
If you were to ask me, my sense is that's our target. So if we can
Okay.
accomplish it in 1 year, then that's fine. That's well and good.
Okay, because I like to think we could do 1.5 this first year, and we'll see how our second year pencils out when we get to that point. But hopefully we can do it at least 2 years in a row. We'll have $3 million in the account.
Right.
Mayor,
Makes sense, Dave?
Mayor,
Yes.
let's say if there's some surplus in this fiscal year, can we transfer this year's to make up for that $1.5 million next year? So like say we'll have $3 million over 2-year period, but it may be 3 fiscal years that we're
All
counting.
right. That's fine with me. What do you think, Mr. Dutton?
I think that'd be quite fine unless Tate needs to spend it before June 30th.
Do you need to spend it before June 30 or not really? Just allocate it.
I'm just thinking that the more flexibility we have, the easier it will be to fund the $3 million that the council wishes.
Okay. Mr. Amata, you understand what we're, or not understand, do you agree or disagree with that concept?
I agree. I think, yeah, there's some possibility, some left over here for this year. Yeah. Keep
Okay.
it.
Mr. Sanchez, what do you think?
I concur. I trust Tay's judgment. Thank
Yeah,
you, sir.
we've worked with him with empty wallets and with full wallets, so this is better. Mr. Sonny, so I already got your consensus. Let's go for 1.5, and any extra money we'll put aside for this opportunity.
Tay, for clarification, where will you take that money from? I'm just curious.
Everything will come out of the general fund, but the
Okay.
target is $3 million transfer into the public projects fund during by the end of next budget cycle, but it will encompass 3 fiscal years: this fiscal year, first budget year, and second budget year.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So how does that look in the budget? So you're going to take the surplus from this fiscal year, you're going to apply it toward the land acquisition, the public projects fund, and then you're going to take another 1.5 next year. But you're going to, that 3 million is going to be taken out of the 3 fiscal years, this one and the next 2, correct? Is that how you're going to do that?
Yes, this fiscal year and next
Okay.
2. Yes, that's correct.
That makes sense to me. Okay.
All right, I think we're all in agreement with what has just been discussed on that item. And Sonny, you concluded your comments and questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So just a clarification. So Tay, it's conceivable, and hopefully it happens, that on year 3, you'll be contributing less than 150.
That's correct.
Less than 1.5.
1.5.
hopefully
Correct.
it may be zero, depending
Yeah,
on how
right.
well we do
So,
in the
so
general
much the
fund.
better.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Sonny. Tay, I've got a question, or maybe it isn't for you. I'm surprised to see that the Mercy House needs new $284,000 more. When we had our last meeting on the discussion of the operation of that place, didn't we come up with a figure as to what it was going to cost for the coming year? Why is 284,000 being asked for?
Yes, Mayor. It's not. This is not cost adjustment. It's just a revenue realignment. The grant revenue came in higher, so what's gonna happen is more of Mercy House costs will be paid for with the grant funding, and then
Okay.
general funding will be reduced by 284,000.
Oh, that's a good-
Remember, Mr. Coops, we got that grant for 3 or 4 weeks ago. We got the final numbers on the grant, and it came in higher than anticipated.
So you've got that 500,000 from the feds. It's going to be over 5 years or something, isn't it?
560 and change, yeah, or something like that, yeah.
And then there was
Whatever it
an additional one that was closer to 700,000 that we're talking about right now, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Right. It was a nice bump that we got in grant funding, unexpected. Yes.
Have we ever, you're looking at the amount of money that we're have entitlement to from the U.S. Treasury, the 21 million. We're waiting to see what kind of restrictions are placed on that donation. Is that what we're waiting for?
Yes. The primary expenditure qualification is COVID-19 impact, and we're still seeking clarification as to some other aspects of much more relaxed rules concerning expenditures. So until we have the revised Treasury guidance, we don't have a concrete facts to make a recommendation to the council.
for the record, members of the council, we are developing a list now. We have a pretty solid list of products that we're looking to include. But before presenting them, we need to make sure that they're going to comply with what we think is going to come through in the guidelines. But we're not behind in the game. We're actually ahead of it. We're just waiting for the final guidelines to come through before we make our recommendations.
And do you have any idea when you expect that to occur?
We think September is what we're hearing, but maybe sooner. But what do you hear, Tay? I heard September. Yeah.
I hope sooner, but yeah, at this time, there's no hard deadline as to when they're gonna release the final Treasury guidance.
Yeah, we can't even count ourselves before September, as it turns out. So, getting guidelines might be harder.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how that we can use that money to backfill an item and use it for something else. There'd be all kinds of possibilities with having a $21 million influx.
Oh, absolutely. And the goal is, of course, to use it strategically. So we want to advance our goals at the same time and comply with the guidelines. So we're trying to thread that needle, and I think we'll be successful in it. So
let me open it up to anybody develop any more questions from the council that we've developed over the discussion on this current budget adjustments.
I was hoping you were going to ask that, Dan. This is Ray. I was saving this for last after we kind of got through the weeds on this stuff here. And again, I apologize for missing the 2 study sessions. Regarding public safety, in the budget itself, maybe Joel can answer this. I noticed we cut a probation officer. One question is why? And then I have another thought that I wanted to approach the body as a whole. I haven't talked to the city manager or the public safety director or anything like that, because I was gonna, just wanted to weigh in as a body. What about putting another 56-hour general law car out there? We had raised our sales tax, and we're telling the residents we're going to make things better. Really, the public safety budget is just pretty much the increase that I could tell of the $800,000 that the sheriff raised their fees because of things cost more. And so I just wanted to lay this out with my colleagues and see how they feel. It's not a mountain that I want to die on, but I'm just taking the temperature.
Joel, you want to correct that? I think we have some more additions than that.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, a couple things that were talked about and recommended at the earlier sessions were to put in 2 more SAOs, which is proposed and in the budget now. And then secondarily, to add a large amount of funding to the traffic enforcement overtime budget, because per hour it's cheaper to do overtime than add a whole car. So we did make some pretty substantial increases. We also learned this year the sheriff's rate increase is one of the smallest I've ever seen since I've been here, 1.45%. So we actually saved about $400 and some thousand off of what I thought was going to be the increase. So that was a piece of good news. And as far as the probation officer is concerned, we had that person at half of a 0.5 of an item. And then when we looked to save money before, we were able to make that cut. However, the reason that was not so painful is he still uses our office as field office for his efforts throughout the county. So we have him in our building, not quite as much, but almost as much as we had him before, and he still does work for us at our request. And so I think that was a pretty strategic way to retain services more than just what the county provides without having to pay for it. And that was largely based on a good relationship that we had with him for a number of years in our building and so forth. So that was, I think that worked out real well.
Okay, yeah, then, okay, that probation officer, that answers my question there. I did see the overtime increase for the 2 cars. I think one's general law, you called it, and the other one was for traffic. Is that correct?
Right. It was actually, yeah, we tend to have the overtime for cars or SAOs, sergeants, whatever, for crime type of issues, some sort of issues that pop up that need priority. You know, we need people there at 10 o'clock at night to watch this or do that. But a good overtime budget's very helpful in that. And then the traffic was specific to increasing that, not just for our motor, but for any deputy who books traffic, who has been shown to be a worker and not just someone that wants to drive around and make some extra money. So we get to manage it that way. And that particular account was set to deal with the calls that come in on complaints. You know, on Park Street, I need somebody in 4 o'clock in the afternoon to watch traffic because we tend to have speeders then. So it's targeted and useful as problems are made aware, were made aware.
Okay, that's helped me to understand it also. So if we keep raising putting overtime in the budget, is there going to be a point where we can't get officers because they've done too much overtime?
That's a great question. We're pretty young and pretty hungry, so I don't think we're there yet. But the other thing is we can pull people from different cities if they prove themselves. We already have people from other cities, for instance, working for Bellflower projects, an example being the street racing task force. We've got deputies that work other units that come and do a Saturday night overtime for us because we know them and we believe in their work. And they're not with Bellflower currently. They have been in the past in many cases. So it's not just a Bellflower deputy overtime account. It's more flexible than that.
Yeah, you know, I'm all one that you need. If we're spending money for Bellflower, it's the sheriff needs to know the lay of the land or the nooks and crannies where bad stuff is. They get used to the town, and if we're drawing in people that are already used to the town, that's fine. But I think at one point we keep giving more overtime, and then with the uncertainty as we know this whole last year when everybody goes on mandatory overtime from the station to, I hate to say it, the civil unrest issues, that's burning up their overtime. And then we got all this money in the budget for overtime. And if we can't get anybody because they're all burnt out from all the other overtime, then we might as well get a car.
Yeah, in those extreme times, that idea has merit. Certainly.
No.
Joel, what is the cost of adding a 56-hour car, and how much do you have budgeted for the additional OT this year?
56-hour car, it's not right. It's over $500,000.
Right.
And I've talked to a number of folks on our deployment. Just having another car out there for general law is, we're actually pretty healthy in that category.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just asking the cost. So what do you have put away for additional overtime?
I ran out of the building to get to a better computer and I didn't grab it. It's going to be 300 and something thousand dollars, I believe. 300 something was my last recollection. And again,
Well,
that's
So the question is, the better bang for the buck question is, do you believe that the $300,000 spent on additional overtime is more effective in addressing the concerns of the city than adding a 56-hour car? That's the real question Ray's asking, I think.
And I think it's a great question, and I absolutely do think that the overtime flexibility strategy behind it is better than just another car. If you have too many people rolling around, they don't tend to work as hard as when the radio's calling.
No, that's a judgment value. Perhaps that's true. I don't know. You know, Ray, Captain Spring was making a presentation to the council tonight. It's a regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Might be a great question for him.
And what I'm going off of is in our budget notebook that we got, from what I could see, a 40-hour car, I thought was 362,000 for a general law 40-hour car, or that's a traffic car. I don't know what the difference is. A 40-hour car is 344. So I don't know over $500,000, because I was basing it on 350, what I saw here in the budget book on page 188.
Yeah, the issue is replacement. So a 40-hour car with replacement, in other words, when they're sick, somebody else hops in, is the price, I believe, that you're talking about. And that's just, again, 40 hours per week. I'm looking at a chart right now, and I want to make sure that's the price. So anyway, that's something we do have already, 2 of those that we pay for with some grant money. And those are 2 overlap cars that we have out there, 40-hour no relief cars. So 56 hours requires more than one person to fill, obviously. So they're out there every day of the week, which makes for that much higher cost.
Or a 40-hour car with overtime.
Well, don't laugh. I was thinking the same thing.
I think the issues here are just answering, because patrol is largely answering calls and occasionally making observations while they're out. Overtime money is always mission oriented. We've got problems in this area we need somebody to deal with. And so it's a different kind of deployment. And having more patrol, just generic patrol, might not be as strategic as having people available to deal with problems that get to council and get to our office and those kinds of things. That's fundamentally the difference.
Yeah. And I just brought this up for dialogue. Like I said, it wasn't an amount I want to die on, but I think, the questions need to be asked at a point, because overtime is going to, I get how we've always learned to get stuff at a discount. And I'm going to say that's what we're doing with the overtime. And it's worked for all these years that we've been really frugal. Maybe it's, something to think about, whether it's this time or next time. I just wanted to put it out there, for vetting it out with my colleagues. Thank you, Joel.
That complete your questions, Ray?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. Sonny, want to weigh in on the idea of an additional car?
At this point, I was based on the budget meeting that we had. We're kind of fortunate that the increase this year from the sheriff is only 1.5%, something like that. That's like what Joel mentioned. That is so unusual, and because I think typically it's about 8%, something like that. And so while listening to Ray, in this good question, but I was kind of thinking that for now, I want to keep it the way it was presented, because that will give us a lot of flexibility. If we decide later on to add a 56-hour car, that's a lot easier to add rather than to take it out later on if our budget goes south, hopefully not in the future. So that's my take on this. So,
All right.
thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sonny. Mr. Hamada, you got an idea on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, definitely would always love to see more wheels and boots on the ground. But I think from our last discussion, as I remember, was the additional staff, the 2 SAOs plus the added overtime, and And I'd like to keep this on watch, of course. We definitely, but for now, I think right now, I think I'm good with what's being proposed with the added SAOs and the overtime. And then definitely keep tabs on this because, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to watch that expenditure, down. I mean, next year, of course, when it goes up. And I'm not sure if anybody's going to bet on 1.45, again. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. Mr. Sanchez, you got an idea for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear Mayor Pro Temp's Dutton's concerns and desires, and but I also hear what my other colleagues are saying, and that's, I think the 2 additional cars and the overtime in the budget, and taking the fact that we are at 1.5, and it's the first time I guess it's that low. I've never dealt with this before, but 1.5 seems like we're getting off on a good year this year. Just my quick question: is there any flexibility to adjust midway, or how would that work? Do we have to make that decision to add a vehicle now and then know that later down the road it's not sufficient and we need to add another one, or do we have to do that today?
No, we can add a car anytime.
Okay. Then my next question is really for Joel too. I have a question on it. The CSOs, is there a particular reason why they can't work later in the evenings after 6 p.m. to continue doing parking citations, especially for areas that are high impacted? The reason I bring that up is I recently did a ride along with a SAO, and he took me out to do a multiple parking ticket violations on Woodruff, and I believe it was Woodruff and Alondra, where we have a lot of apartments there. And he kind of mentioned that that's something that they do pretty periodically after the CSOs leave. And I just wonder if there's adjustment there. Maybe the CSOs can stay on longer, or we hire another CSO to continue doing parking violations so that SAOs can continue to do the more, the larger project or the larger items that we face in our city.
Right,
Joe,
great question. In the past, pre-COVID, we had people, if you were to look at the hours worked by CSOs in a month, in many cases, there was only 2 hours out of 24 that we didn't have somebody out there, 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., something like that. Since COVID, we did have some changes to various schedules, and we've been a little not quite as out there. So we regularly have someone there till 10 p.m. And we often have people coming in at 4 and 5 in the morning. So that's something we're going to expand on as we move into a different, or back to a better era, I guess. And we are looking to hire another part-time person who will take over some of the sweeper shifts in order for our other guys to get out and do more of just the roving around looking for tickets like we described.
Okay, so that was just a rare occasion then on my part that I happened to experience that. Okay, no, that's good. Then I think overall, Mr. Mayor, I think I like to try it out at the current budget from the budget sessions that we've had, and leave it there, and then maybe adjust if need be at a later date.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. All of us know that there's a potential that in September we will have an influx of money that can be allocated in different places that will be determined later. So we might have to sit down and reinvent the wheel at that point when Tay tells us what we can spend our money for. And there may be the chance to put on a car using federal money, for all I know, or have some other money freed up. But I really think that it's an unusual year, and what we approve now for the beginning of July will run for 3 or 4 months, and then we're going to have to reinvent this whole process when we get that money in here to see if it's all applicable to different programs. Joel, I have a question for you, and it's a question I've asked more than once. And when we did the homeless shelter, one of the sales points that was given by CityNet was that calls for service would diminish. Now, it's been a full year, May to May, that we've had the shelter in place, although there have been some restrictions with COVID there, but I think we're full up at about 50 patrons now. Is there a point in time when we will be able to see that the calls for service went up, down, or stayed the same by having the homeless situation dealt with?
Right. I think you're referring to Anaheim's police when you
Right, that was the sales point that was given to us, that they went down 20% in 1 year. I'm not looking for that number, but I'm just interested in seeing whether or not calls for service. And when I talk to the deputies on the street, they say we're not doing as much of the work with the homeless because they're in the shelter. Do you recognize that in the figures anywhere?
when we and I always have to go back and say, well, it depends. With the sheriff's system of taking calls and logging calls, quite antiquated and actually quite clunky in many cases. The type of call that would be for homeless is always clear. In other words, hey, we have a disturbance, and they show up. Well, it's a homeless person, as it turns out. Well, that information doesn't get captured that it was necessarily a homeless person. So very muddy. We've done estimates, and I think I sent something around this maybe a year ago. Our best guess as to the decrease, and we can do that again. It will be an official estimate as opposed to hard facts. But I'll tell you what, it is lower. It's lower because I'm not getting the calls. The same sheriff I'm talking to, say it's lower, not just because some are in the shelter, but because some are out of town. I'm hearing it from residents that it's not like it used to be. And of course, I'm asking because I want to hear that. And so from a variety of anecdotal sources, I'm convinced it's lower. But as far as getting a good estimate or a better estimate than just that, that's something we can work on with Sergeant Ferguson. And I have no reason to think we can't come up with something in the next week or two to give you in a weekly update or whatever.
Yeah, and what it amounts to is when you hear Mr. Dutton, Mayor Pro Tem Dutton, talk about, we have a better than average surplus to work on public safety, which is something that we all promote when we're campaigning. We owe it to the public to keep them as safe as possible. And I think they all recognize that the homeless situation is being dealt with in a positive way, and that reflects in a safer city. And I think we get points for that. But at the same time, we all have noticed this. I come down the Flower Street every morning at 7:00, and always 3 to 5 radio cars are coming off that ramp behind Alan Morris's building. That bothers me. And I know it bothers anybody that sees 3 or 4 or 5 cars all waiting for their shift to end to go back to Lakewood. I really don't think we often get the bang for our buck that we're paying for based on what I see them gathering in hidden places. I've even said to Mr. Dutton the other day, why don't we hire a drone to fly it over some of the areas we think that may be that situation? But I'm kind of spouting off on things that I shouldn't be saying on budget, but I'm a little reluctant at this point in time to add a car to be up there and have coffee with them. So anyway, so I'm going to vote for leaving the adjustments as they are, and we'll wait and reevaluate in September to see if some other funding came in that we can reallocate. But I think that we're on the right mission here with public safety, especially for the $2 million we're spending a year to try to help the homeless, and as a result, help the potential public safety concerns. So any other items that we should discuss before we put this to the public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may add something real quick, and I don't know the exact answer to this, but it relates to your homeless conversation, homeless neighbor conversation that you just brought up. There's supposedly some understanding that there are specialized SAOs out there that especially deal with homeless neighbors. And I wonder if that's something maybe Joel can bring back at a later date, bring us, some information to us on why or why not we should have a specialized SAO specifically to deal with homeless neighbors. I don't know the pros and cons, but I know that does exist. And so that might just be a topic of conversation for the next September item. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate that insight. I really don't think we need to rely on the county figures, that we have enough insight locally as to how many people are on the street. We have these census, we have the people that are the SAOs that are approaching the homeless. We should be able to develop something that pertains to our immediate need and have some figures other than some generalities coming from the sheriff that apply only to the whole county. So maybe we can work on that, Joel, to see if we can't formulate something that's a little more local for Bellflower.
That's good. And I think one of what what you might be seeing are SAOs that are sort of named by their city as part of a team. In other words, their services are more dedicated to that particular topic. That's one option. The other option is they do have Met teams and county teams that do cruise around the whole county and deal with homeless people. They come in, they make a bit of a splash, and then they take off and go somewhere else. We've had those teams in town before as well. But as to SAOs working more specifically to that, that's actually part of what we're planning with the 2 new ones that'll be added to the deployment sometime probably August or September. They're going to be kind of the front line for homeless type complaints and assisted only when necessary by the other members or in their absence. So they'll get very good at knowing the locals in town and what they've talked to them about before. So the idea is not to do less homeless enforcement with the new people, but simply to provide as much or more service while allowing some of our older existing SAO team members to do the other kinds of complaints that are coming in that aren't related to homeless. So I think you'll get a better product when we get rolling with a full team, as we discussed.
Okay, that's all sounds good. I'm very positive. We've invested so much time and effort in the homeless shelter. I just want to make sure that any activities are well recorded as to what's left on the street that is not put in the shelter, so we can deal with them positively. Unless there's any other questions or comment from our council, I'm going to ask the city clerk to open up any discussion from the public if they want to come forward.
Mayor, I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
All right, I appreciate you looking. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the recommended budget with the changes that we've got here. Mr. Stewart, is this our final discussion on this? If we go through this motion and second, will this put this to bed, or are we still going to have any more comments on this?
No, you may make final additions or reductions up to the actual adoption of the budget resolution if you want to in this budget. And we can make amendments to anything you want to. If you have another notion, or if you want to add or subtraction of something made, we certainly have the flexibility to do that. And if we have to schedule another meeting to do that, we can do that as well. So it's we have plenty of time and plenty of ability to do that.
What I'm hearing from the council is that we're satisfied what has been presented today and that we're prepared to make a motion to accept this, but we have the caveat that we could make amendments up until a month from now, I believe.
Yes, that is true.
All right, knowing that, guys, does anybody want to make a motion for what we've accomplished up to this point?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the City Council of Bellflower to approve the proposed adjustments to the management's recommended budget for fiscal year 2021 to 2023.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilman Sonny Santinez, supported by Councilmember Raymond Hamada. Please poll the council.
Councilmember Santinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamada,
All right.
Councilmember Sanchez,
He's
Aye.
muted.
Aye.
Mayor Coops,
Yes, aye. Motion passes 5-0, but keep in mind, everyone, that we still have some times if something comes up that we need to talk about, don't be bashful. We still have opportunity.
And let me remind the council as well, gentlemen, that let me remind the council as well, gentlemen, that Captain Springle is coming to make a presentation to the council tonight. You can inform him on what we've done and ask him his point of view if you seek to get it. And he might have a different point of view. I don't know. But he certainly would have an informed one. And if you want to move a start looking at something a different direction with regard to sheriff's department coverage, it's the perfect time to discuss it with him tonight.
All right, well taken. We'll see whether or not you're going to keep him informed. He may just stay in his station and not come to City Hall based on our mechanical problems.
Yeah, I believe Joel's already, I hope he has that covered. So,
Okay.
And he's,
Yeah.
he's pretty hard.
Maybe we should put in the budget something about a new internet provider.
well, we've tried that, but we've done that a couple of times. So, but maybe we'll do it again.
Money can't buy love and it can't buy internet, it sounds like.
No, I guess not.
All right, I think if we've discussed everything, it's now 3 o'clock. We got it done in 1 hour. And we'll adjourn this meeting at 3 o'clock and we'll reinstate again at 5:30 this afternoon. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.